A lot going on here at the federal level. With that, we are joined by Bureau Chief Cormac Sweeney live in Ottawa. Good morning to you, Cormac.
Good morning, Mel.
All right, so let's start with Prime Minister Trudeau's trip. He is in the air right now, off to speak to G7 leaders. What do you make of what will come from these conversations?
Well, I think we'll see all the G7 leaders having some sort of announcement at the end of this. They usually have some sort of joint statement that they make. And there will be talk, of course, of the global pandemic recovery, trying to address economic issues, things like taxation. There's been talk of trying to align countries on taxation moving forward to pay off the massive debts a lot of governments have had trying to address this pandemic, but also, environmental issues. That will be a key focus for the Prime Minister. But the big question on most Canadians' minds is what's going to happen with travel, with heading to other countries now that we have vaccines in much better supply than we've had in the past. When borders open up, what will that look like? There has been talk about trying to get some sort of unified vaccine passport. I imagine that will be a key topic of discussion. Canada is on board with this, trying to create a vaccine passport, but not every country, every region might be involved. How that will look, what the system will be, those are going to be some big discussions happening, but as well, vaccine donations. The Prime Minister has faced a lot of criticism for dipping into the COVAX supply. Now, that I will say the COVAX program was supposed to be originally a system that allowed countries to take from, but also donate to other countries. But Canada is the only major country that seems to have been taking from, while other countries are struggling right now with vaccine supply. We're seeing the U.S. President Joe Biden has announced that he's going to be donating about 500 million shots to other countries that are struggling right now. We'll be keeping an eye on to see whether Canada makes any similar commitments now that we've dipped into the COVAX program.
So indeed, Cormac, you mentioned about the possible border reopening. I know all eyes on that. We don't have a timeline, but given that it expires, June 21st, the anticipation is that we'll see some restrictions lifted at least come the 22nd. Have you heard more on a potential timeline? Do you think that the end of, because it's been closed for some time now?
It has been since March of 2020. We've had the U.S. border closed, and then international borders might be a little bit separate. I think we're going to see the U.S. border reopened first. That's the signal we're getting from the government. But how that will look, what the timeline will be, is still yet to be seen. I mean, there's a lot of talk about this opening on June 22nd after the latest month-long order expires. We did get some indication of what people might be allowed to do with hotel quarantine rules lifting a little bit. That was announced by the government yesterday. But however, that is not official yet. They say they're considering this. They still have to work through a lot of the details with the provinces and territories. And this will only be for fully vaccinated people at the start, whether it comes to traveling to the United States or just travel in general, getting exemptions and restrictions lifting is all tied to whether people are fully vaccinated or not, and whether they have a vaccine that's approved by Health Canada. So if you got vaccinated, let's say in Russia with the Sputnik vaccine, I'm sorry, that doesn't cut it. It has to be Moderna, Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson, one of those vaccines. But there are a lot of still outstanding questions about how this will look when the border is reopened. We could have an announcement as early as tomorrow, is what the Toronto Star is reporting, on possible border restrictions being lifted with the United States. We'll have to wait and see what happens there. But again, a lot of it tied to your vaccination. And we're still waiting again on what type of proof of vaccination we'll have and we can use when travel does ease.
That will definitely be interesting. Finally, for you, there's a lot of pressure on the feds to take some action, accountability when it comes to systemic racism. We're seeing what's happening. You saw the report from Adrian Gabriel in London, Ontario, the Indigenous communities and reconciliation. So can you give us a sense of where the government stands right now in trying to action item some of these things on their agenda?
Well, the Prime Minister, in the wake of the attack in London, said, right now is not the time to focus on the next steps. It's to focus on healing and the incident that happened. But he did give some indications of where the government might go. He says we need to do more to deal with online hate. We need to do more with the infrastructure security for places of worship. And we need to do more to try and help people with understanding. So I think there are some broad measures that they're hinting at right now, but we have nothing specific from the federal government government. The National Council of Canadian Muslims has been calling for a summit on Islamophobia that brings together the federal and provincial governments. And of course, when it comes to dealing with racism and issues around that, this goes beyond just one community, but obviously Islamophobia is a big issue right now. And there are some who are saying that all federal leaders are being a bit hypocritical in the wake of the London attack. They talk about the need to address these issues, and yet I think it's the group Canadians United Against Hate has said they're not speaking out enough against Bill 21 in Quebec, and whether that leads to discrimination and issues because of that secularism bill. So there are a lot of conversations moving forward, some criticisms for federal leaders. What we'll see from the federal government, we hope in the days and weeks ahead, we'll get more details from the feds about how they plan to address these issues, whether it be the residential schools issue or whether it be the issues of Islamophobia and widespread racism in Canada.
All right, a lot to cover here. We appreciate your time today. That's Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill Bureau Chief out of Ottawa. Thank you.